of exciting news, lots of important value to keep an eye on. I'm Chris Spags, joined today by the premier fantasy NBA analyst, at least on this show. That's Eddie Fear. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm noticing how your approbation and lead-ins are getting slightly more subtle and more reasonable as the year goes on. But by the time we get to April, it'll be like, joined by a guy in a sweatshirt. Eddie, how you doing? So it's good to know we're becoming more.
You're not far off. I think it might be my own sort of energy coming to a dull roar after doing this for 7 days a week, as you can relate, since football season has started. So I feel like I got to keep the energy up down this home stretch here at the end of the year.
It's that or after doing 20 shows with me, you're like, this guy is not nearly all he was cracked up to be. What's going on with this guy? He's not that sharp at all. It's one of those two.
One of the two. It's hard to say. I'll take the hit, though, and say it's just me being a sleepy boy leading up to Christmas. But we are here. We are sponsored by Thrive Fantasy, the premier to use prop bets to get held. It's a new DFS app where players draft a lineup built of prop bets of only top-tier athletes, and you pick 10 prop bets out of 20. And the less prop is, the more likely to get ahead of the field. So that's where the game theory lies. I'm going to drop a code right into the chat now. You get $10 on any $10 deposit, $20 on a $100 deposit, and $50 on $200 or more. So go check Thrive out now. They are presenting sponsor. They support us, so please support them on our behalf, because it's a good way to build your bankroll. It's fast release money, no waiting around. Eddie, let's talk about a prop bet up top of one of the studs on the slate, a guy who people are probably weighing the merits of playing after he just went off versus Memphis. They have James Harden over under 26.5 points. Which would you go?
Is there any weighting to the prize for correctly discerning?
Oh, there is, but I certainly didn't note it.
Okay. That line's about right. I'll take the under. That's obviously not a tremendously good matchup. Not to say that he doesn't still have an upside, but based on his recent form, I think I'm generally sort of under the field on Harden today in general. So I'll take the under in the wager as well.
Yeah, the under 10 points compared to 90 for the over there. So you took the more higher value play. I haven't projected for 28.9 today. So I would take the over. I'm buying into the turnaround here. I don't think he can have a game like he had versus Memphis where he shoots 9 for 14 and still gets 70 fantasy points. That seems unlikely, but I do think this Utah team doesn't have him quite as figured out as people do. People seem to assume they have because he's had 2 bad games this year versus them. I think James Harden will get back on track today, but that is Thrive. Go check it out. Check the link in the chat. Get that free deposit money. And Eddie, you said you're not that crazy about Harden tonight. Why are you feeling a little bit down on the beard?
It's just a bad matchup. Like is it a matchup he can't excel in? Yes. Has he been in tremendous form recently? Yes. And did he just do his tremendous form against Memphis, which is even a slightly more difficult matchup than this one? Yeah, absolutely. That being said, I'm still more excited about taking James Harden in non-bad matchups than taking James Harden in bad matchups. And with him having been in excellent form a couple games in a row now, I expect his ownership to increase due to that. And I'm just more of a zig when they zag kind of guy, and I don't think we are going to see 80-point every night Harden from this point forward. It's similar to the next matchup John Wall is in, especially if it's not a great matchup. People are going to be like, oh my God, John Wall, 2 good games in a row, like 80 last game, nom nom nom. I don't think he scores 80 fantasy points a game for the rest of the year, and his price will have come up and his ownership will have come up. So there's some other excellent stud plays on this evening slate, and at what I expect to be slightly more advantageous ownership, I would rather take advantage of some of those. I won't. You can talk about stats. They played. Harden played 5 games against the Jazz in the playoffs last year, and 4 games last year in the regular season. 3 the year before that. 4 the year before that. So, I've watched a lot of James Harden against this Utah team, and he's been basically the same James Harden the entire time, and over the course of that time, he had, I think in those last dozen regular season games, he had 1 game where he got over 80, a bit over a year ago, and maybe 3 games in the 60s, and a half dozen games in the 50s, and a couple in the 40s, and in the playoffs last year, even when you were getting playoff minutes and super productivity out of your stars, in those 5 games, he had 1 at 65, 1 in the high 50s, so it's just not I project James Harden for a perfectly respectable 54 fantasy points tonight, but it's not so much the fact that I'm not thrilled with the projection, it's also beyond that the fact that I'm not shocked if it doesn't work out brilliantly for him here, and there's just other guys who I think it's less likely to fail. The odds of James Harden getting under 40 are much, much higher than the odds of Russell Westbrook getting under 40. I would, as far as, that goes. So just I think Westbrook profiles with a better floor and a larger ceiling, or at least a similar ceiling at the very least. And if we expect the ownership to be similar, which, I will go ahead and
Well,
say.
yeah, what if I were to tell you that we currently have Westbrook projected for twice the amount of ownership as Harden?
Okay, good. That's a lot of people have asked me about Harden today. That was what my intuition would be. People should see Westbrook against the Bulls and Harden against the Jazz, and you would think that would change things a little bit. So I don't have a super strong take here. It's just that James Harden is James Harden, but at if you're saying that makes his ownership 8 or 10%, I'm guessing.
Yeah, 8% for Harden right now.
Okay,
DK.
then that's fine. I have no issue with anyone playing James Harden. 8% is low enough versus the odds on him, achieving an upside that I think it pays you off of enough of the time that it's about right. But if it was 15 or 20%, which is what it had been erroneously indicated to me in the past, then I would have been like, no, that's okay. I'll let the other people jump on top of that.
Okay, that seems fair. What about the other studs? You talked about how you prefer guys there. You mentioned Westbrook. Which of the guys above 10K or in that range, I guess, are you feeling the most comfortable with?
Yeah, I like Westbrook a lot. Now I will say the caution in this entire game is a little interesting, but in a radical statement, I should point out that the Bulls' defense is not going to be that bad tonight. If you want to do 3 things to this roster to make their defense better, the first one would be to get Zach LaVine off the floor. The second one would be to get Jabari Parker off the floor. And the third one would be to put Chris Dunn on the floor. And they've done all those things. So, whereas this is still not a good defense, and I think they would definitely be below average, this is not as bad of a defense as they've been in the past. They've literally significantly shored up several guys here. And that's worth pointing out. And for that reason, I've tempered what I expect out of Russ a little bit. But, that being said, I just still like the matchup for Russ. He's home. If they do happen to blow them out, he's going to have probably a lot to do with it. I don't think much like thinking I don't think James Harden is going to score 80 every day for the rest of the year. I don't think Russ Westbrook has completely forgotten how to shoot a basketball. And I like his ability to get to the rim in this matchup. They're not going to have anyone to stop him there. So I just think he's fairly safe and comes with an upside. Now, the price is not cheap at all. Point per dollar. I like Karl-Anthony Towns better than I like Russell Westbrook among really expensive players. I like Russ a little more than Giannis. I like Russ a little more than Embiid. I like Russ a little more than Harden. So of the stud guys, he may land number 2 for me as far as points per dollar goes. But, yeah. So I suppose my favorite of the studs to round it back around would be Karl-Anthony Towns, and what's a good spot for him in every metric of determining such a thing.
Okay, yeah, that seems fair to me. What are we doing with the Bielitsa chalk tonight? He's projected for 59% ownership on DK. And what is he? Hold on, now I hit that. And he's projected for 43% on FanDuel. So he is the chalk play on both sites today. Marvin Bagley is out for the team. We also have Iman Shumpert missing from the starting lineup. Yeah. Are you feeling comfortable with Bielitsa as the chalk?
Yeah, especially at 4,400. The 53 changes it up a little bit. On DraftKings, I am inclined to swallow. On FanDuel, I think you can get away with spending a little more on Rudy Gay, spending a little less on Jay Crowder, and it's actually saving like $1,000, and you can play Jay at the 3 also. But he's still an absolutely fine play. To add some context further to that game, we already talked about Towns obviously being in a great spot, but yeah, having Shumpert out is a little bit more critical than or at least as critical as having Bagley out. When just Bagley is out, and we've seen a number of games of this, they kind of take his extra minutes and throw him on like Justin Jackson or some crap like that. Let me lower my volume before that goes. Any Archie Diacono love tonight? I love him on Yahoo. Tenor. Certainly fine on the other couple sites, but again, I'm 3 for 3 on Archie Diacono this year, and he's certainly fine tonight. We'll talk about that game a little bit in a second, but the price has come up a fair amount, and he will be more popular. But he's certainly a fine to very good play wherever you play him. But talking a little bit more about the Kings and the Timberwolves matchup a little bit, setting aside the, I believe, still pending Jeff Teague news, unless that has landed in the last 3 minutes.
No, he's still questionable.
Yeah, we still have him questionable. All right, so they're on a back-to-back 3 and 4. They are one of 3 teams that are on the back-to-back tonight, being the Knicks, the 76ers, and the Kings. That's it. And nobody plays today and tomorrow, for what it's worth, if you're worried about such things. There are no back-to-backs on Monday, Tuesday side of things. And that just... So that adds me a little bit of concern as far as performance goes in a game in which they're on the road and Minnesota's an 8 or 9 point favorite. Like, there is a point at which this blows up into, you know, a Ben McLemore, Yogi Ferrell, Justin Jackson, etc., Costa Koufis-led ridiculousness fest. So that's what you're hoping to avoid here. So I'm a little less high on the Kings than I was, for example, yesterday when we were, or it was just me as a solo show, it was Sunday, but I was like, yeah, all the Kings are good. When they're missing Shumpert and they're missing Bagley, they want to give Fox, Hield, Bogdanovich, Bielitsa, and Willie Cauley-Stein 35 minutes each, and that's basically exactly what they did. And I said, I think they're all going to be good to great, and they were all good to great. Bielitsa ended up landing the biggest number there and having his second really exceptional game recently where, you know, puts up 40 plus fantasy points and looks wonderful. But you also got 30 to 35 out of Hield and Bogdanovich, and those guys are just too cheap. So especially on DK, Bogdanovich is still just too cheap. He's a little cheaper than Hield on both sides. I have him projected for about 1.5 points higher on both sides. But he'll also be more popular, and this is just a fine spot for Hield too. There's lots of tape to watch on this one. This is the third time these teams have tussled this year. But this would be the game I'd be probably most inclined to stack on the slate. Like, I like Fox, I like Hield, I like Bogdanovich, I like Bielitsa, I like Cauley-Stein. If Teague was in it 100%, I would like him. If not, I'll like Derrick Rose even more. And I already like Derrick Rose, especially on FanDuel where he's still just a little bit underpriced. He's 6,100 there. That's too cheap in what's an exceptional matchup, and had a 40-plus burger. Actually, Teague missed a game against them, I think. I'm going to look this up in a second, but I'm pretty sure one of the other games Teague missed this year was actually against the Kings, and we got a big Derrick Rose game there, so there's a perfect simulacrum, if you will. I like Wiggins in this spot as much as I will in any spot. Shout out to Emac for shooting guard against the Kings. Covington has obviously become very cheap. His knee obviously looks a little bulky. There's some concern there, but the price has come way down, and if he's anywhere near his form of 5 to 25 days ago, is a ridiculous bargain. I guess I don't want to play Taj, but Saric, even with Taj in, was seeing 30 minutes off the bench and is still priced advantageously in a good matchup there. And Towns is my favorite spend up on the whole slate, probably, again, site dependent, but I have him projected for about a half point more than James Harden. So,
yeah, no, I support all those plays that you listed there. I think the Teague news, which I would like to hear, and you did mention, you were right, Teague did play one game versus the Kings, and then the other game, Derrick Rose started and put up 38 fantasy points. So in the game without Teague, so it could be an interesting spot for Rose tonight if Teague is ruled. Talk to me about Phoenix and New York, because this is a game that I like a lot. Obviously, a lot of is Cantor. He's projected for 45% ownership on DraftKings right now, but not a lot of people on the Sun side, even though I have seen some articles, including my Switch and Hedge today, talking heavily about Devin Booker and how he returned and got a bunch of minutes and looked kind of what you expect Devin Booker to look like. What about this matchup and also as a potential game stack?
I love it as a potential game stack. I think, and this is the last game we're going to be able to play most of the Suns for a little while because that rotation's about to get extremely crowded there. But, I Booker's still at, Booker is appropriately priced now. We're close to it at 8,400, 8,500. He's a little better priced on FanDuel. Certainly a game that you would hope, stay close. Again, we have the concern of back-to-back's been a little squirrely this year. Like, you look at the Lakers going on their recent, 2-game road trip to the Mid-Atlantic states, where on the front end they played Charlotte, and on the back end they played Washington. And both games were basically pick'ems. And they went into Charlotte and demolished Charlotte by 30, and then went into Washington and got absolutely pantsed. So it's just been a year where I'm noticing more and more that, the back-to-backs make this interesting. And I'm referring to the Knicks here, but it's worth talking about the the Kings as well. If I have a concern for the Kings, it is the fact that this is a 3-4 for them, and they are a team that everyone got plenty of minutes, and
they're running a lot.
yeah, so I have some concern there. It's good that we have no Bagley and no Shumpert. It means those 5 main cogs on this team are going to play 35, 36 minutes, but they're I would lower my projection on all of them by a good 5% due to the back-to-back, and increase their delta, their variability. Pivot from Kanter to Nurkic would be probably the first guy I was going to go to. I'll think of a couple others. A few centers I like, but yeah, Kanter does seem in a ridiculous spot. Without Mitchell Robinson, weird things have to happen. I would say I'm still a little softer on Kanter than most other people, and those who know me know I'm a big Enes Kanter guy. I like him as a human being, as a basketball player. And I think your most likely outcome here, somewhere to the order of 75% of the time, is 30x minutes and being exceptionally productive in them. And at 7,000 and 6,700, he is appropriately chalky, because the most likely outcome is he very easily pays off his price. I don't have my next thing up anymore, but I had him at something like 31 and a half minutes and 46 fantasy points. Like, it's a fairly incredible spot for points and rebounds, and that's really what he does well. So I like Kanter quite a bit, and the fact that Mitch is out means it's a lot harder to replace him. Now, it's not impossible. They got blown out a couple games ago, and Cornette, who is in play at 3,500 at power forward on FanDuel, by the way, played 26 minutes, and Kanter got crap for time. So the game can go sideways. And, the back-to-back can be relevant here, although he's been largely immune from that in the past. So I like Kanter, but I would say my degree of certitude appears to be lower than some of my peers. I still think the predominant likelihood is that he has an exceptional game. But, they can run Cornet at the center. They can run Noah Vonleh at the center. You still have some possibility of Kanter getting in foul trouble. Like, other people seem to be, like, lock solid 100%. I'm a little less excited about that. But Booker, McCall Bridges, especially on DraftKings at 4,100, it just makes a lot of sense in a tremendous matchup in which he'll get a lot of time. He is very frenetic. It would not shock me to see him play 32 minutes and get 16 fantasy points tonight. It also would not shock me to see him play 37 minutes and get 37 fantasy points. So while he has a wide range of outcomes, is still priced particularly well. Even against the Knicks, I just don't want to play Josh Jackson. It's obviously an ownership play. If his ownership was at like 4%, then I'd have some interest, because he just can take a million shots. But with Booker there and Warren there, that's really his only path to victory, if you will. I don't think it occurs that often. Warren makes sense for me. Again, he's still a little unpriced, still a little too cheap on FanDuel, also just like his buddy Booker there. But TJ Warren seems fairly solid still. Again, having Booker back, I think long-term will be more of a downgrade than we've seen. DeAnthony Melton is sort of a tournament stretch play now. It's been interesting. Jamal Crawford has looked good recently. They've had him basically running point guard. When they put Melton on the pine, they basically have Crawford out there running point, and he's looked pretty good. And he's picked up, I want to say, 5 and 7 assists in the last 2 games. So I have more interest in him than I did before, when he was just sort of this off-the-bench gunner shooting guard, replicating his role in Minnesota. Although with Booker back, that obviously decreases the likelihood of seeing more of that. But just wanted to mention, because I shit on him a lot earlier this year, where people are like, he keeps getting 20. I'm like, those are the ceiling games. He's shooting 70% from the field and doesn't do anything else. He's started to pick up some assists because he's actually running the point a fair amount. So that seemed worth pointing out.
Yeah, Jamal Crawford pops up a lot in my projections. As does Rashawn Holmes, who actually is projected to have a pretty good chunk of ownership. The most owned son is Rashawn Holmes on DraftKings, projected for 15% right now.
Yeah, I'm fine. He's 41. Am I getting that?
Yep. Actually 4,000.
4,000. Yeah, he's that's just fine. There is a very real upside there. I will say he has overperformed. He has, versus his career numbers, and he's a few years in now, shot better than he has. The steals and blocks, he's had a couple real ceiling games where he's had 4 or 5 steals and blocks. That's not really his forte, and he's doing it in like 21 minutes, where he would average just like a stock. So I'm absolutely fine with Rashawn Holmes because he's cheap and there's obviously an upside. And I'm not going to have any issue with almost anyone in this game. The defense should be largely optional. So.
Yeah. So that's how I checked out with it too. I think both Booker and Wall a lot, definitely heavily above the field on because I think they're in a nice
Tim
spot.
Hardaway Jr. is out. Someone just sent.
What was that?
Tim Hardaway Jr. is out.
Oh, that is that
okay. All right. Alonzo Trier is already out, if I recall. I believe Damian Dotson is currently questionable.
I thought the deeper dive guy said that Dotson was ruled out.
Dotson was ruled one way or the other. Yeah, he's out. Okay, so Dotson is out. Hardaway is out. I think we are leading into sort of a Trey Burke spot here. He returned last game, played, I want to say, 13 minutes over the weekend. But what this does is, one, it moves Moutier from someone I'd have wanted 2% of to match the field to someone I'd want 5% of, because he probably gets his 30-plus minutes now. And he probably, and once you lock in those minutes, and he's playing the Suns, okay, this starts to make a fair amount of sense. I'd have to sit there and think about him and Derrick Rose for a little bit, but I'd have them pretty goddamn close. So I would consider some exposure to Moutier. I would certainly consider adding some exposure to Burke. I would feel more secure again in Cantor, not necessarily because of the minutes that can still go sideways, but just greater offensive role. You're going to get a ridiculous amount of shots jacked up by Kevin Knox. I'll project Kevin Knox now for 39 minutes and 22.5 on the over-under on the shots. Like, he's just going to shoot all day. But yeah, so that's good news, and we should be able to do something with that. So yeah, I would go up to having an actual moderate amount of interest in Moutier. Trey Burke, let's see what Trey Burke's price is offhand. I'm not going to lie, I didn't look that one up today.
You weren't ready for your Trey Burke in case of emergency plans?
Yeah, I didn't have, in case of emergency, break Trey Burke. 45 on DK, 4,000 at point guard on FanDuel. This is not the craziest thing. He's going to get some time there. Yeah, I think that's the most likely way this goes. Talk about something else for about 30 seconds. I'm going to review some of my notes and a couple of old rotational patterns.
Yeah, also, while you're looking things up, also getting questions about how it affects Mario Hezonja, so that's something to note there. But yeah, another question just to address real fast from Trent E in the premium Slack. Who gets the extra run for Milwaukee? Sure, we'll talk a little bit more about Milwaukee after we sort through this Knicks news, but with Brogdon out, I'm not as much concerned about the extra run as I am the opportunity for Middleton and Bledsoe. Bledsoe's been particularly a better play with Brogdon out. Just got to leave a few more shots there for Bledsoe to do what he needs to do. And I think for me, I went a little heavier on Bledsoe when I got that news. And also I was already pretty okay on Middleton. But those were the main guys I would look at.
Yeah, okay. So, all right. No, Burke looked fine to me, and he's had 2 more days to recover. So I'm going to say Burke is 98%, if not better. So I don't think they throw him out there 35 minutes. I do think your mega ceiling Trey Burke 57-point fantasy game we've seen like 5 times over the last couple of years is very likely. But where he's 4,000 now, I think it's very possible you get 24 minutes and 33 fantasy points or something like that. The combination of the opportunity and just the openness of the rotation at this point. I'm trying to figure out how to sort in Courtney Lee, who should be there, but you have no Trier and no Dotson and no Hardaway. So your real guys who should play the 1 and the 2 on this team are Lee, Moutier, Burke, and Ntilikina. So in theory, those guys are going to play minimally 96 minutes. So let's give 32 to Moutier. I've now got over 20 minutes for some average consortium of Burke, Ntilikina, and Courtney Lee. And at $4,000, if I only get 20 minutes of Trey Burke against Phoenix, I don't feel horrifically about that plan. Like, that's not great. I'm hoping he gets 28, 24. But even if that's my downside projection for the minutes, and right now I would project 24 to 26, I'm kind of excited about some Trey Burke exposure there. So Trey Burke makes a fair amount of sense to me. I don't really think I want a Courtney Lee.
Apparently, Courtney Lee is starting, by the way, if that affects things for you.
Who is?
Courtney Lee is apparently starting, according to the premium Slack.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, so they're going to start Moutier, Lee, Knox, Vonleh, and Cantor. All right, so the rotation should go like this. All right. I don't think it necessarily affects Hezonja. I could be wrong. I got to make sure Lance Thomas is still out. He's not. He's available. Okay, that's interesting. Sorry, but this seems important. So let me get a full...
better to get it right. That's what we always say here at Osmo.com. Better right than fast.
I've never heard anyone say that.
It's actually the first time it's ever been said on anything.
Okay. Yeah, but Moutier now makes sense. The biggest issue with playing Moutier was he was not guaranteed to get 30 minutes. There were a lot of ways that it would get screwed up, and rather than getting 32, 34, which we've seen recently, he gets 23. That's much harder to happen now. Not impossible, but much harder. So yeah, I think you end up with something like 19 minutes of Ntilikina and 24 minutes of Trey Burke is what I'm guessing right now. But basically, I still, even though we saw a couple really impressive bench sessions out of Frank Ntilikina, I'm not that inclined. Trey Burke, 4,000 on FanDuel where you can drop it is especially attractive to me. If you can make that work out in your lineup somehow, that makes a good bit of sense to me. I like Moutier more. I like Knox more. It slightly upgrades Hezonja, but not. I don't think he sees an extra minute if they do what I expect them to. They're more want to run small than run big in all the projections I'm looking at in the past here and all the rotation overlaps. So, but yeah, not bad news for Cantor. Not bad news for Vonleh. Minor pickups for other guys, but that's just a massive amount of usage. It is not that different from Zach LaVine being out for the Bulls. And again, last game, the Bulls had over the weekend, I was like, I basically like all the Bulls. There's just so much usage to go around, and they're all priced down for the matchup. And it's a similar situation with the Bulls today, and it's kind of a situation like that with the Knicks today. So in tournaments, on FanDuel, I don't mind Cornet, but on DraftKings, I don't have a problem with you playing Cantor, Vonleh, Knox, Moutier, Burke. Lee, I presume, is sitting on just about the damn minimum. Like, is he $3,000? He's 35.
He's 3,500 on DK.
Yeah.
So that's
which is fine. He's certainly not out of play. 35 is a number that works. He's 500 over the cap on both sides. That's interesting. Let's see what he costs on Yahoo. Huh?
Well, we're not really plugging Yahoo on this one, Eddie.
Oh, we're plugging.
This is a Thrive
my number one job is to make people money, so I'm plugging Yahoo. Yahoo has 2 guaranteed overlay tournaments today, just like they had for football yesterday, where they're instead of that's just a tenth the size of the one yesterday, but they have a $100,000 tournament that is only taking in $75,000. So they're guaranteeing to. Let me put it this way: it's max 10 entries, $20 to enter. It's the best thing to do with your $200 tonight. And as soon as the tournaments start, your $200 turn into a minimum of $267 in equity, and that's a good deal. They're just trying to give you $67, so I would take it.
Here's a pretty valid question from Saz Crib in the premium Slack. Does this defense? They've been the 3rd worst defensive rating over the last few weeks.
I'm afraid you have to say that again.
Saz Crib in the premium Slack wondering if this helps the Knicks defense. They've had the 3rd worst defensive rating over the last 3 weeks. Obviously, if you're replacing Tim Hardaway Jr. with Courtney Lee, there should be at least a bit of an upgrade. But I don't know that you could say one guy changes the outcome that much.
Yeah, not markedly. It's Courtney Lee is not as good as he used to be, and Tim Hardaway has actually been improving a little bit. So, yes, it's an improvement, but it would not change anything for me. Like, you might, if I went through it and spent a year developing the perfect algorithm, it might reduce my Devin Booker projection from 44.3 fantasy points to 43.9, but I don't think it's an actionable change.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think one guy can have that big of an effect unless he's like a game changer, which Courtney Lee is not at this stage of the game. SJM in the premium Slack asking, would you go Murray or Hield for, or excuse me, not Murray, Moutier or Hield for cash right now?
It's a good question. That's just about a tie now. I'm probably going to go with Moutier, which feels weird as hell, but Hield being, just a little bit more shot dependent. Yeah, I will go with I will go there. Trey Burke 12 on Yahoo. I'm actually going to talk Yahoo for another minute here. Two things. First of all, the salary cap doesn't work. How I've heard 4 people try to convert Yahoo prices to DraftKings prices and Yahoo prices to FanDuel prices today, and they just have it all the hell wrong. It's not percentage of salary cap because there's a tax, and the tax on Yahoo is vastly lower, where a max price on a guy is, we'll say, $50, and the minimum price is $10. So it would be equivalent to DraftKings if the maximum price on a guy was $15,000, and it isn't. So the presence of a much lower tax makes stars and scrubs a better strategy. And but saying like a guy who is on Yahoo who costs $15 is the same thing as a guy on DraftKings who costs $37.50 because of X% of the salary cap is facile. That's not the way math works. That's not the way DFS works. But $10 guys, the best of which are probably McCall Bridges, Rashawn Holmes, and Ryan Arcidiacono. Other notable ones are Muscala, Chandler, Looney, Boban, which again they have late swap, so keep in mind $10 Boban, maybe leave that possibility open. Avery Bradley, some of the other nuts plays are Bielitsa at 12, Barolo at 13, Bogdan at 17, Cantor at 20 is probably the best play on the slate. And there's a couple others there, but wanted to touch Yahoo for a second because my number one job is just to try to make people money, and nothing I say is as useful as every dollar you invest getting you $1.33 back. So go do that.
Yep. Let's see. How many Knicks is too many Knicks would be the question for TAC right now in the premium Slack.
It is a bit site dependent. All 3 sites that I'm now thinking about to try to make that work, but it depends if you have, say, Booker coming back the other way. But probably your 4th one in general, you would be proceeding into what I would consider a mistake.
Fair enough. Let's see. Those Yahoo ones appear to be full already. Somebody's saying, yeah, a lot of people playing the Yahoo right now.
I guess you should have entered earlier. I'm sorry. They filled. I apologize. Hopefully they keep it up, see what they do tomorrow. Apologies for the tease. Not my intention.
It's not full right now is Thrive Fantasy, which is the new DFS app, who actually does sponsor this show, where players draft a lineup built of prop bets of only top-tier athletes. Pick 10 props out of the 20, and the less probable a prop is to occur, the more points it's worth, and that's where the game theory lies. I'm going to drop a link in the YouTube chat right now, so go play there. Play Yahoo too, but right now play Thrive because Yahoo's full and Thrive is not. Thrive is thriving right now and giving you deposit bonuses as we speak, so go hit that right now. Let's talk about Eddie, this prop bet on Giannis, who is a guy we haven't touched much upon other than a little bit up front. They have an over-under for him, 23.5 points. Which would you go with?
I'll go with the under. I'm going to take the under and Giannis in this matchup for a while. It's been difficult for him. They do a good job of closing him out. If I'm going to charge it up, if I'm going to go at $1 in this relationship, my first one would be Bledsoe. My second one would be Brook Lopez. My third one would have been like $5,200 on FanDuel. Brogdon was a really nice number, but with him out, I'm not overly worried about that change. To segue a little bit there, you're gonna get Snell or Connaughton. Doesn't really matter. I'll play Connaughton before I play Snell. I'm not thrilled playing Connaughton in this matchup. And again, this is different from the other times we've had guys out recently where we were missing core members of the offense. So you were distributing Giannis's 20 shots or 15 from Bledsoe or Middleton. Now you're distributing the shots from Brogdon, which is 8, which is still relevant, but not quite as sexy. So worth keeping that differential in mind.
Yeah, that last box score from Connaughton, which people may see when clicking around, that was with both Middleton and Brogdon out. So Middleton being back will certainly take some of that back off the table. For me, I'll go over on Giannis. I have him at 25.5 today. So go play that on Thrive right now. Click the link that we just dropped in there. And it's the prop betting app. We've got a lot of new fantasy apps to go make money on that are offering you really good deposit bonuses. So support them. I mean, support them because they support us, but also because it's a better way for you to make money. Easy to do it with all these different options out there. Let's go. Got some questions building up the Slack. Is it crazy to only have played the Sacramento-Minnesota game and the Knicks-Phoenix game in your lineup for cash?
Is it crazy to only have players in those 2 games in your lineup for cash?
Correct.
You'd have to tell me the site, but the only reason it would be crazy would be if your players were bad, which many players in those 2 games were priced very well for cash, or if there were players in other games who were exceptional values you were missing. So it would be site dependent, but inherently, no. There's nothing inherently wrong with having a cash lineup that is comprised only of 4 teams. In my opinion.
All right, fair enough. Probably a popular question for people today with all the opening up here. Does Middleton's sprained finger on his shooting hand worry you? He's been shooting poorly as of late.
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried about his decreased performance, and that sounds like a perfectly reasonable explanation for why that has come to pass. So when you say, does it worry me? Yeah, it's going to be screwed up. Like, John Wall's feet bothered me for quite a while, and he was terrible for a while, and then he went off 3 games in a row. So yes, Middleton's finger being jacked up does bother me, and it's going to be a thing until it isn't, and it's going to be a really good tournament winning day for people who play him on the day that changes, because him being priced at 6,200 or whatever is just way the hell too cheap for him hitting anything near his upside. But it's not the best matchup for him, and again, I like the matchup for Bledsoe a lot, who's been macro good against the Pistons, against Reggie, against and there's no reason on paper that this wouldn't work out, or video or anything. So I'd be more inclined to go that way, and so I'll wait on Middleton, who I can apparently get at 4% any day for a tasty matchup. But getting him right would be good. So he's just fine in tournaments, but yeah, his finger being jacked up would be consistent with him looking terrible. So I believe it.
Would you go with Covington and Courtney Lee, or Mikal Bridges and Trey Burke for DKGPP?
I'd go with Bridges and Trey Burke in a GPP. Your ceiling is simply much higher. Your floor is lower, but you want to give yourself a chance to win a GPP. Jabari Parker's been ruled out for illness, or sitting in the locker room and being pissed he's not in the rotation, but we'll go with illness. Courtney Lee's fine, but he's going to play... He might play 30 minutes. You might get 30 minutes of Courtney Lee here. So Courtney Lee is certainly not out of play, but... I would certainly rather spend that money somewhere else if possible.
Yeah, seems fair. And how much do you think his ownership will get up with this news coming, let's say, half an hour before lock?
Courtney Lee's?
Yeah.
I think enough people know he's Courtney Lee. I'll guess 7%, somewhere around that area. Nothing I would consider too arduous.
Okay. I feel like people might clamor a little more because of the value. Even though there is a ton of value, I feel like when people see a guy at 3,500 who's had a couple games in the 28 range over the last few weeks.
$10 on Yahoo. A little tenner.
We'll keep an eye on that. If we have the ownership update, we'll let you guys know on our site notifications to see if anything.
Let me do a quick check and see if there was anything else I wanted to point out about specific dudes that hasn't been pointed out. Very good spot for Blake. Very bad spot for Drummond. I said that in chat and in private messages a few times, but that may not have necessarily gotten out there. I talked about Bulls Thunder. The defense is changing there. I don't mind Donovan Mitchell in tournaments. Last year against the Rockets has been remarkably up and down. But still at his price, there's a big ceiling. You look at his 2 games he played this year, he had 15 and 50, and neither of those surprised me. So something worth mentioning there. Yeah, I'm still looking at that rotation. I think Courtney Lee now plays probably something like 26 minutes. And it's the Suns, so I have to begrudgingly still project him for 22, 23 fantasy points, which is, I'm giving him quite a boost there. But I would be, again, this is one of those things where the odds he gets you 20 are probably higher than the odds Trey Burke gets you 20, but the odds Trey Burke gets you 40 are higher than the odds that Courtney Lee gets you 40. So there's, again, that sort of breakdown we do.
That seems reasonable. And also, we do have an ownership update right now. Currently, Courtney Lee is up to 3%. Let me just double check that number, actually, because I just pasted everything in. Courtney, where'd you go, Courtney? Yeah, we got him at 3% right now. I'm sure we'll climb a little higher, but we'll watch the ownership. We'll watch the stock market of our ownership percentages as we go. Who would you think has more raw fantasy points, Courtney Lee or Reggie Bullock for a punt?
I'll take Courtney Lee. For the matchup mostly, but I would have Reggie Bullock at 18 or 19 and Courtney Lee again in 21, 22 range inherently, I think. That's about right.
Point guard, point for point, do you prefer Gallo, Middleton, or Buddy Hield? Why point for point?
Raw likely production, I probably have Hield like a point over Gallinari, who would I then have a couple further points up. Gallinari probably the better cash play between them, just for matchup and rebounding, just a slightly safer floor than Buddy. But Buddy Hield would be just points per dollar more frequently. You play these out 100 times, I think you would net the most points out of Budrick.
Any interest in a George Hill punt now that Brogdon's out?
No.
Fair enough. Courtney Lee and CP or Mikhail.
Sorry, I expect, first of all, you're breaking up. I'll need you to say that again. Second of all, I expect George Hill to still just back up Eric Bledsoe. So I have no more interest because of the fact that he's out. But he's in that, like, I don't mind George Hill if you think this game might blow out and you're playing no one else big from it. George Hill has a make sense punt if he gets 24 minutes and runs the second unit. But in that sort of scenario, I'd much rather play Nerlens Noel. There's obviously a very decent chance that game blows out, and if you're giving me 20 minutes of Nerlens Noel for $3,400 or whatever the hell he cost today, I'll always have interest in that, and you just get that once in a while. This is certainly a spot you can see it in, so that's the kind of play you're making on George Hill. I just don't think that's an extremely likely conclusion.
Rinpack asking, would you go Courtney Lee and CP3 or Mikal Bridges and CJ McCollum?
Lee and CP3 or Bridges and McCollum?
Mm-hmm.
I'll go Bridges and McCollum.
Okay. Any thoughts on Chris Paul on DK?
Any thoughts on Chris Paul on DraftKings? He's 77.
I assume so. I don't have him in my
No,
lineup.
I'll go over and find it. I didn't. Chris Paul is $7,700. Generally disinclined, just not again a massive upside spot. Like I need sort of special circumstances to be excited about taking players against Memphis, against Utah. Do guys go off there? Absolutely all the time. We just saw Harden go off against Memphis. He's gone off against Utah in the past. Could you get 50 out of CP3 here? Sure. And again, I think this is definitely a spot I don't want him next to Harden. But yeah, I am disinclined towards making that wager. But you do get players who have an upside at ridiculously low ownership. So, if you want to run Chris Paul in the tournament, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But not a matchup in which he statistically has excelled. I had this data up earlier today, so I can look at it. I stand corrected. He had 2 very good games against the Jazz. He had 3 games of greater than 55 points above against them since the beginning of 2017. I'm going to take a second and see how many of those games James Harden played in, because that's a pretty important caveat. So just a moment since we've gone down this little conversation, I've got to do due diligence here. Harden played in 2 of them. And he outscored Harden in both of those 2. So, yeah, without further going back and looking, I apologize. I reviewed a fair amount of tape on this, but even though these games are all in 2017, they've played 3 regular season and 5 postseason games since then. Obviously, I can't figure it out right now, but doing the really shitty practice of game log watching without further perspective certainly does seem to be that it's a spot in which he's hit an upside repeatedly in the past. And it's not difficult to imagine that you see them concentrating their defensive efforts more on Harden, and Chris Paul, does good things. I like DeRozan against Philly. I think DeRozan at $8,100 on DraftKings is especially just a little bit too cheap. At that point, what's the real floor here? Like, let's assume your worst nightmare happens, and I guess the worst nightmare is injury or the game not staying close. If there's not a blowout, they sick Butler on him, and somehow Aldridge, who seems to have an even tougher matchup, somehow goes off against Embiid, and you only get I think you're getting 30, 35. And at 8,100, we're getting to the point where you're sort of solidifying a floor. And we've seen guys who can slash and cut really get into the middle of this Philadelphia defense a number of times. So I like DeRozan. I have him for the mid-40s, which is not thrilling, but the price has come down enough that even that is pretty nice, and I do think he still carries the upside to put up 50 or even 60, which he's done I think 5 times this year. So I like DeRozan quite a bit.
Where do you go, Evan Turner, Mikal Bridges, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for a DK GPP?
I'd go Bridges. Best matchup. Largest upside. He's not going to get you much above 40, but Evan Turner, I don't like the matchup and has started to share minutes more with Mo Harkless. I'd play Mo Harkless before I played Evan Turner and save $800. And I don't want to play either of them, but I would spend $3,500 on Mo Harkless. Probably before I would spend $3,500 on Courtney Lee. Well, that's close. I don't know. Depends where Courtney Lee's ownership ended up being. But if you had a share of Harkless in your 100 lineups, I wouldn't blame you. But yeah, that's how I come down on that one.
Do you like Wendell Carter?
Well, he's obviously cheap. $4,800 is nice, but the matchup is pretty nightmarish. Was, as I recall, unimpressive the last time that they got together with the Thunder, which isn't surprising. And I don't think it's a matchup that really affords him the upside you would need if you were going to be like, okay, today's the day I'm going to take a shot on Wendell Carter. So $4,800, I totally get where you're coming from when you say that, but disinclined.
Yeah, it's a tough one with Wendell Carter with how much he just fouls out and the rotation's getting kind of wonky there. And he always projects well for me, and I have to be like, no Wendell Carter, because it's never the right play. More often than not, rather, not the right play.
Yeah.
Is Aminu okay in cash to you for DK?
I don't think he's probably ideal, but he's not terrible. He's 47 or whatever that number is. I think the matchup for him is actually one I like a fair amount. Aminu and Cash still feels kind of wonky for me. He's a very streaky player, and he went on what appeared to be sort of an uncharacteristic run of being fairly consistent. But, one reasonable streak on there. So I doubt he would fit in my Cash lineup, but I'm not markedly opposed, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't think he's as good as Bjelica, who plays the same positions and is $300 less and has a better matchup, etc. But if you already had Bjelica in your cash lineup and had Aminu in another spot, it wouldn't really bother me. So if it fits in and it's sort of like he's my last guy in, is this horrid? No, I don't think it's horrid.
What a great way to couch that one.
I don't think it's horrid. Yes, I guess I could. Yeah. Maybe that was not the best. Yeah. Well,
say that to a girl on a date. See how she takes it. I find you
all
not
the girls I've ever
objectively
dated take it very well.
Oh boy, this is a specific one. Who would be your GPP guard under 47?
GPP guard 47 DK was the question?
Yep.
Okay. I like a specific question. A question get a specific answer. What do you think about Guy? Is always a little bit vague. Like, well, he's got a beautiful singing voice, but the guys I would not there's no one here who immediately says play me, I'm awesome, but I will say that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Trey Burke, Ryan Arcidiacono would be the three men among whom I would choose. And then I'll leave the final decision to you. That way, if it goes badly, I maintain plausible deniability.
4,700 is not a number I'm at a lot here. I wouldn't even, I'm not playing a $4,700 guard. I think I'm playing just Bjelica as my cheap guy under that price. So fortunately, I don't have a great answer for you, buddy. Let's see, Dunn and Moutier, same price on DK. Who do you think has the higher ceiling?
Moutier. I like Chris Dunn. I like Chris Dunn on both ends of the court. And again, we talked about the Bulls a lot over the weekend. It went extremely well. Like I'm a fan of Chris Dunn, but that matchup is much, 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 much harder. So yeah, I will go the other way.
If you're playing 150 lineups, how high are you comfortable going with Enes Kanter and Bjelica? They have 45% and 60% ownership respectively.
I do think they're both underpriced, and I do think they have relatively little chance of failing. I would probably go heavier than the field on Bjelica and be around the same with Enes Kanter, because Bjelica does not have a lot of peers that I can expect to do as much. Bjelica is same price position as Evan Turner, and I just like Bjelica by 9 more points. So, and I just don't have that many options. Enes Kanter, I'm excited at my limited number of center positions, limited basically to 2. So I'd like to have some exposure to Towns. I'd like to have some exposure to Nurkic, certainly. I'd like to have some exposure to Steven Adams, who I think has a huge upside. And we were talking about that game earlier today. I think he had 39 the first time out against the Bulls. I'd like to have some exposure to Brook Lopez at 5,100. So there's other places I'd like to go a little bit more. So I would probably be above the field on Bielitsa and right about at that number on Cantor. Maybe above on Cantor still. I still might try to like 60% because I am a real believer in just the most likely outcome is him satisfying or even getting well on top of tournament expectancy. So good question, but I would probably go well over on Bielitsa and be roughly concurrent on Cantor.
Interesting. Yeah. And in the max 20, I'm at both projections actually. And that was before I got there before we updated and Bielitsa got even higher. But I think to me, 60% is just where my comfort level is, where I'm still at least having, 2/5 of my lineup still have a shot if Bielitsa for some reason just dies. I mean,
yeah,
hopefully
it's always an issue of personal comfort. Like and sometimes it changes. It changed very late for me. Some days I was fine with just being like, it's this guy. This guy is going to get there. I'm going to. And again, I say 100% pretty goddamn rarely. I've said it like 5 times this year or something like that. I said it about Delon Wright yesterday because, I knew the field was going to be 60, 70%, and I was that confident in the play. Let's just go on top. Let's take it all. And I think I'm 100% on those calls. But it's always an issue of personal comfort. You're always, if you do that, you're one turned ankle away from completely trashing your night's investment, which if you're investing the correct amount, that shouldn't be a nightmare situation. You should never put an amount of money in play that if you lose every single cent, you really give a shit. And if you do, you've done something wrong, and you should call a phone number and get some help. But yeah, so it's a personal tolerance issue. But what would I personally do? Yeah, I'd be probably over on Bielitsa because again, I think he will definitely play 25 minutes unless the game blows out. He's probably going to play 30. You might see 34 again. It's a good matchup, and $4,400 is just way too cheap. He should cost $6,000 tonight. It is a massive, massive discount. So,
all right, let's speed round these remaining ones. Thoughts on you? Kind of breezed by Chris Dunn when you mentioned him, preferring Moutier to him. Would you go Dunn and Markkanen? Any thoughts on them overall against these Thunder?
I really like Dunn and Markkanen. Markkanen looked very good in the first time these two teams got together. It is a matchup that on paper you would be concerned with, but rewatching the game earlier today, he was able to get what he wanted against Pat for a while, against Jeremy Grant, and was very effective in that game. He, and this is one of his first games back, he played, 25, 27 minutes, I think, and had 35-plus fantasy points with Levine in. I like all these Bulls with just all that. It's the same thing with Hardaway out. Get on some Knicks and get on some Bulls. The Knicks are better because they're playing Phoenix, and the Bulls are playing arguably the best defensive team, certainly in the last month or so. But I like basically all the other guys on those teams because just 30% of usage just opened up. So, yeah, I really like Chris Dunn. I really like Ryan Arcidiacono. I still have him projected now for just a hair under 30. And, last game, when he was one of my favorite value plays, and I said I'd take him over all the Spurs guys, over the whatever, he was 4% owned and $3,400. Tonight he's going to be 15% owned, and he's $4,200 and $4,400. So obviously I'm less of a fan than I was then, but still just all that usage gone. He now starts and plays all the point guard minutes as opposed to before where he was starting and ceding most of them to Chris Dunn. With Levine gone, he's getting a full load of minutes. So, yeah, get on top of that. Again, especially Yahoo, $10 goddamn dollars. But fan of Chris Dunn basically everywhere at all his prices. More of a fan of Markkanen, I think.
Fox and Nurkic or Cat and Trey Burke for DK Cash?
Fox and Nurkic for cash. I like Trey Burke, but I cannot go there in cash. There's still a very realistic non-zero chance he plays Dick for minutes.
Especially with a knee injury. You don't gotta bank on that in cash. Yep. Adams, Blake, and Hazonia. Oh, my God. 4x4. Adams, Blake, Hazonia, and Fox, or Burke, Cat, and Knox?
Adams, Blake, Hazonia, and Fox versus whom?
Bogdan, Burke, Cat, and Knox. I feel like I'm reading a Dr. Seuss book. Please, no 4x4s.
The first one for cash, the second one for tournaments.
Suggestions for small forwards for FanDuel Cash.
Nemanja Bjelica, Jay Crowder, Rudy Gay. I suppose Kevin Durant wouldn't bother me. If you managed to price up to there, Paul George wouldn't bother me. But I like the mid-price guys the most. So probably Crowder, Bjelica, Gay. Some combination of the two of the three of those. Could be missing another one, but that feels about right.
Who is the better FanDuel GPP duo, Embiid and Moutier or West and Cantor?
Westbrook and Canner.
Last guy in, Jeremy Grant, Archie Diacono, or Mikal Bridges for a single entry?
I'll go with Archie Diacono, as I believe the lowest ownership of those three.
Lillard or Simmons for a DK GPP?
Lillard.
Booker or DeRozan in a GPP?
Booker on FanDuel, DeRozan on DraftKings.
Booker on DraftKings too. I disagree respectfully. Knox, Draymond, FanDuel Cash.
Sorry, Knox. What? You're breaking up every once in a while.
Knox or Draymond in FanDuel Cash?
In cash, Knox. That's not even close. Draymond in tournaments, I think, is a brilliant pivot, but it's absolutely Knox now in cash, remarkably. But Draymond's a fine tournament pivot instead, if you want.
With already having Knox and Lee, would you close out point guard with Rose or Moutier for a DKD?
I'd probably go to Rose under those circumstances.
Kennard or Crawford? Yeah, Crawford.
Crawford, but I don't really want to play either of those guys. But Crawford easily between those two. Kennard is getting the start again, so that makes him sort of a more reasonable question. That makes it very close for me, but I'll still go with Crawford. That entire Kennard, Galloway, Stanley, Bruce Brown, I'm even missing one off the top of my head, 5 guys at the wings there. Snell is getting the start, so careful with your Connaughton exposure.
Warren and Moutier or Fox and Knox for a DKP?
We went Dr. Seuss there.
There's been a lot of rhyming names, which is throwing me for a loop.
Yeah, I'll go Chicks with Dicks play Fox and Knox.
Bogdan, question mark.
Yeah, thumbs up. I can give you a better take, but yeah, feel free. Have yourself some Bogdan.
Yeah, getting some big minutes. Jimmy Butler for cash.
Sorry, what? Or Jimmy Butler for cash?
Klay Thompson.
For cash, I'll take Jimmy Butler. For tournaments, I think Klay Thompson might be the slightly better play, but there's a very real upside on both of those gentlemen. So,
Rose or Moutier for FanDuel?
Probably gonna go Moutier now.
I would agree. Archie Diacono, Gallo, or Dunn and Grant for a DK single entry?
I'll go Archie Diacono and Gallo.
All right, we got through all the premium Slack. Anything in the YouTube? Boom, boom, boom. Does the Nerlens Noel matchup strike you as interesting at all? You are a Noel guy.
Yeah, I like Nerlens Noel quite a bit. You're just hoping the game blows out and he plays. I mean, he's almost matchup proof. He's just a really good fantasy producer. So you're just hoping he plays, 22 minutes instead of 14, and he's going to do probably pretty well for you for 3,400. But yeah, it's a great matchup. Whether or not he ends up with Felicio or Robin Lopez, who's getting more of the backup minutes now, or whomever, you're just hoping that game blows out. Don't play him alongside Russell Westbrook, Steven Adams, Paul George, Lauri Markkanen. But other than that, go ahead.
All right, we are locked with at least one game. I guess this question is still relevant though. Would you go Vonleh or Harrell for DraftKings?
That's a really good question. I like both of them quite a bit in terms. Harrell was good both of the last times that they had this particular go-round. And it's a matchup I would expect him to do well, and he's been so bad recently, but I really do think he has 50-point upside here, but it seems really unlikely. With the news that Tim Hardaway is out, I guess I got to stick with Vonleh there. But I like both those guys in tournaments. But Vonleh is, a sublime GPP pivot off now fairly chalky Knox at power forward on FanDuel, I would think. So yeah.
All right. Do you want to pull up some daddy likes on our one game since the people demanded? It is America's favorite game.
I don't know if we have statistical backup for that, but I'm not going to challenge you. I'm just going to assume you're right. Let's see what we got. I got a 315K big jam. 315. At least you know that they are really min-maxing those prices. Like, they are not just willy-nilly picking a number. 315.
I miss when they used to have $5 tournaments with $100,000 prizes instead of $10 and $12 tournaments.
Well, blame the people who made sports betting legal. It ain't getting any better for a little bit.
Fair point.
All right. Let's see what we got here. So, chalkiest guy in the early slate, Blake Griffin, 19.36%. Daddy is ambivalent, but that's about where that number should be. Amazingly, number 2, we thought we were so clever. Chris Middleton at 13%. Like, at that point, I would have no interest. Like, that number's got to come down a little bit for someone playing as badly as he's playing. He's cheap. He's like $1,000 too cheap if he was in perfect form, but on a slate of considerable magnitude, that's more than I want to take the risk on a guy who's looked consistently badly, like 9 out of his last 10 games. Giannis, 10.7%. Daddy likes that. 10% Giannis is usually going to feel good. Brolo is 7.77%. 3 sevens. You hit the jackpot. Daddy likes that. Eric Bledsoe, 7.27. Like, the price is up there. It is a really good spot for Bledsoe, but even at a really good spot, I haven't projected for low 40s, and he's very rarely a guy who goes much over, say, 50. So when you're paying 76, 78, 79 for Eric Bledsoe, you're really pricing out his upside. 6% Reggie Bullock. I have no idea why that would be the case. Like, I don't mind Reggie Bullock, but 6%, that's a big ass number. Like, Reggie Jackson's 4%. Maybe people clicked on the wrong Reggie.
Bucks allow a lot of 3-pointers shot would be my guess.
Yeah. No, it's I'm just saying it's still Reggie Bullock. Anyhow, the Bucks still moving at a good pace too. Like, it's not dreadfully terrible. It's just a bigger number than I would have expected. Pat Connaughton, 4.5%. Again, not starting, so it's a curious decision. I guess the backup minutes go to him, and if they keep Sterling Brown out of the rotation again, it'll be interesting to see if he completely gets shot down again. We'll see how that goes. Luke Kennard, 4.15. Andre Drummond, 4. Again, smart public. Last game, I was big on Drummond. Drummond went out and gave you 62. That was the last game. This game, because it's a tougher matchup for him and a better one for Blake, 4% Andre, 19% Blake. That's very prescient and sagacious of the field in general. Reggie Jackson, 4%. Langston Galloway, 4%. Yeah, so, this... I don't know, that's just what I don't want to take. So you have 6% Bullock, 4% Kennard, 4% Galloway. 0 or 1 of those guys are going to be good. But 1.65% George Hill. I'm fine with that at that number. 0.6% Tony Snell. Last Tony Snell game was a classic Tony Snell game. He had 13 fantasy points in the first 3 minutes and ended with like 17. It's pretty strong. Jose Calderon, 0.6. Yeah, I don't hate that at what I assume is close to the minimum. Stanley Johnson, 0.45. If I was going to play one of those guys, I would have played Stan Johnson at 0.5% ownership. Had multiple 40-point games coming off the bench. If he returned to that role, he would be massive. He probably won't, but Thon McCurr, 0.39. Sterling Brown, 0.35. Hopefully he plays. Malcolm Brogdon, 0.26. Congratulations. You played yourself.
There we go. Even in one game. Way to go, people.
Yeah.
Put Brogdon in there. All right, so we got everything we needed to do. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to Thrive Fantasy for sponsoring the show. When we are done here, make sure to like this video and leave a comment down below just complimenting Eddie on his goatee. I feel like that's the comment we want today. So tell Eddie how nice his goatee is today in the comments down below, and you'll be entered to win our 24 days of giveaway. Every day we're giving away something. Today, it's a month-long pass to any sport of your choosing at Osmo.com or an item of merch from our new store at shop.osmo.com. All you have to do is like this video, leave a comment down below on the static version of the video, the live chat right now. You'll be entered to win. Just compliment Eddie's goatee. You'll be good to go, and you'll be entered to win our grand prize on Christmas Eve, which is an all-access pass for 1 year. Every sport at Osmo.com at your fingertips. All the ownership projections and rankings will be there for you. That's given away on Christmas Eve. It's a $700 value. So like this video, leave a comment down below, and you'll be entered to win. Any parting words? Go watch all these games. Watch our nights fall apart before our eyes. Well, at least mine.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch your night fall apart before my eyes. That sounds good. So no, all set. I might be off tomorrow. Josh is recently returned from his vacation and will be reassuming his duties as content director extraordinaire. And I have no idea how many games are tomorrow. I think it's a decent number, so maybe I'll take a different day off this week. But I might be back tomorrow. TBA.
All right. Well, yeah. I don't know. I'm tomorrow, and I'm supposed to do, and then I'm off Thursday and Friday. But one of those days I have to do DK, I think. So
Gotcha.
whatever. We'll figure that out. We'll figure that out on the back end.
All right.
But thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll see you again soon. Good luck.
Bye bye.